Count them up, folks. That is 9 straight wins for your St. Louis Blues, who defeat the Colorado Avalanche by a final score of 2-1 in what may have very well been the gutsiest victory of the season. This is the Blues Hub Postgame Show. I am your host, Ethan Hannaford, joined tonight by Thomas Welch, and we will get to all of the breakdown in just a moment. We look forward to hearing your thoughts, your comments on what was, to be quite frank, one hell of a victory tonight for St. Louis. But before that, we have to let you know that the Blues Hub Postgame Show is presented by Hot Shots. St. Louis is home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. Thomas, holy cow, what a game tonight. What a performance. I mean, we know how talented this Colorado team is. And you have to have talent to be able to play with them, but you also have to have where you fall short in talent, you have to make up for in heart. And the Blues had more than enough heart tonight to squeeze this one out. What a fun one this was to watch. Boy, I know you were tweeting it multiple times throughout the afternoon. It just had that playoff game atmosphere, that vibe. The play was physical, very intense. And in the end, the Blues end up squeezing this one out, like I said, for their 9th straight victory.
Yeah, the stage was set for the St. Louis Blues, coming in with an 8-game win streak, going up against a Colorado Avalanche team who has not only solidified themselves into a playoff position this season, but you've got Nathan MacKinnon on the other side, who I believe leads the NHL in points right now. You've got Cale Makar, who's a generational talent on the defensive end. I think they had an 11-game win streak when they were on home ice. So we busted that, I believe. So, there was a lot riding on this. And I think the biggest thing for St. Louis Blues fans was, hey, obviously we've been red hot since Four Nations break. Colorado has been red hot too. When you say that the Blues are the best team in the NHL, probably Colorado fans are one of the first teams that'll be like, hey, what about us? So it was two mutants, two giants going toe to toe, and was really a good litmus test for the St. Louis Blues to see hey, is this a run? Is this just the Blues going on a streak and beating up on some bottom dwelling teams like Chicago and Nashville? Or is this solidified, a newfound team that's capable of hanging with the big dogs? Because all things considered, if things work out in the right way, this could potentially have been a second round playoff matchup, if the Blues make it that far. So this was nothing to laugh at in terms of the schedule, but the Blues came in, held their own, stood toe to toe against one of the giants in the league, and came out victorious. I mean, I would put the game of the year tag on this game specifically, 1000%.
Well, just a gritty, hard-fought win, hard-nosed win. You saw that physicality that we have seen so much of from the Blues here in this red-hot stretch now, where they have came away with points in 17 of 19 games, I believe is what it is.
That's crazy.
And actually, it might be 18 of 20 now. I forget off the top of my head. It's one of those two. Either way, the play from this team has been unbelievable, unexpected. But now you kind of said it, and I'll solidify it just following. It's been a lot of beating up on bottom of the barrel teams, and when you get a team like Colorado on the road, a place where St. Louis here in the last several years has really struggled to play and have success, for them to be able to continue having that success that they've had as of recent, it shows just how gritty this team is. And that is without some of their normal stat areas where they have been more so dominant. Without having some of those in their favor, it just goes to show how hard fought this win was in some of those areas. 29 shots on goal. When was the last time that the Blues allowed 29 shots on goal? I mean,
it's been a while.
It's been at least several weeks. In fact, there was, I don't remember the last time that they even allowed 30, and that's still the run that they're on here. But 29 is still the highest that they've allowed here, I want to say, in this stretch. And when you have a line like Nichushkin and Nietzsche and MacKinnon, I mean, that's just brutal. That's brutal to have to deal with. And they definitely had their success. Another area that the Blues definitely had their struggles in tonight was in the faceoff circle. did not have that dominance that they have had as of late. And we've talked about how the Blues have been able to, in an area that pretty often ends up being a 50-50 category, the Blues have been able to take advantage of that. We've seen 55-45, 57-43 tonight. 63% for Colorado in the faceoff circle. That's what happens when you have Nathan MacKinnon taking at least a third of your faceoffs. So that was an area of the game that Colorado was able to control. Regardless, though, the Blues able to weather the storm. And despite not having all of the numbers on their side necessarily, they weather it and they come away with a victory.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest storyline from me, is that massive swing in terms of faceoffs there. Like, you kind of see the divide between, obviously Robert Thomas has been fantastic and has been, I think, one of the top players in the entire NHL since the Four Nations break. And that makes sense considering how well the Blues are playing. Still continues. I think he had 2 assists on the night, so he's got a streak going of 2+ assists. I think it's 4 games in a row, but he's up there with some crazy names in Blues history for that. So he's been playing great hockey right now. But then on the other side of the faceoff dot, you've got Nathan MacKinnon, who's just an absolute bull in a china shop every time he steps on the ice. And like Robert Thomas is great in a lot of areas of the ice, but if you're going up against Nathan MacKinnon in the faceoff circle, that's a tough task for anybody in the league, much less Robert Thomas. You know what I'm saying? So it is difficult. And it's a tough matchup when you look at it on paper. And that statistical swing just kind of shows the story of the day for the Blues, and facing an absolute onslaught, not just in the faceoff dot, but on offensive pressure. Jordan Binnington kind of had to stand on his head multiple times, but we know Jordan Binnington is capable of doing that. This Blues team had to, button down the hatches defensively, make sure that they were covering every lane and block every shot that they were able to. And that's kind of where it showed up on the stat sheet for me in favor of the St. Louis Blues. 22 blocked shots on the night for the St. Louis Blues, who are kind of in do or die mode right now. So it makes sense. Obviously, the Avalanche have kind of built themselves in cushion. So they're not going to go out there and eat bullets like the Blues are, who are trying to scrape and claw their way in. I'm sure, the Avalanche don't want to risk injury in that regard, but just 9 blocked shots on the night for the Avalanche. But if you're the St. Louis Blues and seeing that massive swing in the faceoff circle, like you said, Ethan, when that's kind of been your bread and butter in terms of success against these other teams, knowing that you can still come out victorious against such a giant opponent, against one of the league's powerhouses, without controlling the faceoff dot, I think is crucial for their confidence moving forward.
Another day, another Blues win means that Thomas is another day closer potentially to losing all of his hair. And the people are excited, Thomas. The people are excited. I think we're just throwing it up right in front of us here. They are just as excited about you potentially having to shave your head as they are. I think this Blues potential playoff run here, and we love to see the excitement in the chat. Be sure to share your thoughts on the Blues win today, your takeaways from the game. What you're excited, how excited you are to see Thomas be bald here in a couple of weeks potentially, and then even Sarah giving you some love for the hat, which I know you mentioned you've been wearing a lot of hats lately because the hair is growing long. Those days are almost over, buddy.
Yeah, it's gonna be nice to get rid of it, and it'll be nice to kind of celebrate the way that this Blues team is playing. Almost like a rite of passage, like, with every hair that falls to the ground, like another team, another fan base in the NHL is crying because they know that the Blues are coming for them. So I think it just, this game is just so, we kind of talked about it, but it's just such a confidence boost for people that were obviously we're hopeful, and a huge win streak like this makes you, want to jump on the bandwagon and be like, that's it, 3 in a row, screw it. This team's winning the Stanley Cup, which is what we always do. It's kind of like a roller coaster, but 8 games in a row, 9 games in a row is a lot longer of a sample size. And with a win like this against a powerhouse in the league under your belt, it's also adds to that sample size of hey, you can really go, you can really make some noise if you make it in the playoffs. And I don't know what the score is for the Minnesota Wild right now, but I believe they were losing. So the Blues potentially have a chance to tie them in points on the season, which is crazy to say because a month ago we were talking about who they could potentially get with a draft pick. So it's an exciting time for Blues fans right now. Absolutely.
The Minnesota Wild currently trailing New Jersey 2-1, a little over halfway through their game in St. Paul currently. So we'll keep an eye on that one as we continue to discuss your comments. The Blues winner to make it 9 straight for St. Louis. And it all got started about halfway through the first period, Thomas, when Zach Bolduc netted his 16th goal of the season, all 16 coming under Jim Montgomery. He's now third among rookies in goals scored this season, behind just Michkov and Celebrini. Good company to be in, I would say,
No
Thomas.
kidding.
And I got to give all. I don't want to give all the credit, but you have to give at least a good chunk of the credit to your guy, Robert Thomas. You mentioned 2 assists tonight on the power play. Very patient with the puck. Waited for Cale Makar to come out towards him, and it left an opening in the high slot. And Zach Bolduc banged that one home, gave the Blues a 1-0 lead early in this one.
And it's so promising to see Zach Bolduc have so much success with so little games in the NHL under his belt. But the power play has kind of been his bread and butter since the time that he was like 12 years old. So it makes sense for him to kind of mimic that success and be able to find those weak areas of the ice on the power play. So the idea of Bolduc, Snuggerud, Robert Thomas, Dvorsky all finding power play time with this team in the near future is diabolical for the St. Louis Blues. And you got to be terrified if you are the rest of the NHL. But yeah, it's just Robert Thomas being a great passer like we've grown accustomed to and like he's been leaning into this last stretch of the season. And Zachary Bolduc, I mean, what can you say about this guy? Could have had probably a hat trick on the game. And I know Blackwood made a ridiculous save on one of his shots from the slot that probably on most goalies or most occasions, most nights would have gone in too. So this guy is the real deal. Like big shots in the NHL absolutely play, and he's got one of them. So whenever you give him the ability to uncork that shot, you're gonna find the back of the net more often than not. But he's also a playmaker. We saw him kind of set up Braden Shen on occasion and almost had a tap in goal. I don't think Braden Shen got all of it, but you got to respect his shot, but then you also have to respect his passing capability. So the world is kind of the oyster for Zachary Bolduc and his development so far. It's going to be exciting to see how he takes kind of the next steps, especially once he starts getting minutes in the playoffs, because we know that playoff hockey is a different beast. But we've seen that he's capable of bringing that physicality. I mean, he threw a massive hit that knocked someone's bucket off tonight. So just adding the versatility to the Blues lineup and kind of how this team has historically been structured with guys like Ivan Barbashev, with guys like Torpachenko, and now with Zachary Bolduc fitting that mold. He's a different kind of mold. He kind of has higher offensive potential, but when you can move a guy up and down the lineup in different positions based on where you need him and have him still be successful for a team, those are the guys that you want kind of to be warriors for this team down the stretch. And it looks like Zachary Bolduc absolutely is one of those guys, and Dylan Holloway as well.
You mentioned the big hit that knocked off the lid of Ryan Lindgren. May have gotten away with the no call there, but once again showed the physicality, and the Blues showed a lot of that tonight. 30 hits, is that what I saw? 30 hits, I think that was the stat there, and that is most definitely an impressive one for St. Louis. The chat talking a little bit about Nathan McKinnon and how freaking good that dude is. He was unbelievable tonight again, and he netted Colorado's only goal tonight, not too long after Bolduc put the Blues ahead 1-0. They entered the zone, and I believe it was Makar with it. Ended up getting it to center ice, and the Blues did the one thing that you can't really do. I think they had several guys trying to clear the puck. There was a lot of scuffle right in front of Binnington, and Nathan McKinnon ended up wide open on the backside. And when that puck just kind of leaked out of there, he did what a top 2 player in the league is going to do with it. He sent it to the back of the net for his 30th goal of the year.
Yeah, and that's just kind of unlucky, like the puck's bouncing around, guys are standing around trying to find out where it's at, and it ends up on, of all people, Nathan McKinnon's tape, like standing on the doorstep. Like, we'd love to say that, like, I'll bet on Jordan Binnington more often than not in those circumstances, but that's a save that he shouldn't be expected to make, is a highlight reel save, like on the doorstep to Nathan McKinnon. So sometimes the puck just doesn't bounce your way, and that was one of those scenarios. But this Blues team of old from earlier this season probably would have hung their heads, and next thing you know, Avs throw 3 more goals in the back of the net, and then you're out of the game in the second period. But this team didn't give up, and they just continued to battle. They know what they're capable of. And they know that they're scoring not only at will, but they're capable of scoring in bunches at will. So if they just keep working, eventually it'll lead to good things. And, that's the recipe for success for this team right now.
Thomas, I'm curious as to what your thoughts were about the second period. It was a 1-1 deadlock throughout. I know you had some comments on the old tweeter about didn't like necessarily what you were seeing from St. Louis. What were your biggest takeaways from that middle period?
It just felt like the Blues were having difficulty. I mean, it might have been, maybe it's the adjustments that the Avalanche made, but I think they ended up with, it was like 3 shots on goal. It was not like very impressive.
A quiet period overall.
Yes. Yeah. But, sometimes those are going to happen along the stretch of however many games we've played since the 4 Nations break. And that'll happen on the stretch of a playoff series too. So, sometimes you just got to batten down the hatches and weather the storm. And that's where, your defense shows up. And that's why, some of those guys that block shots and have a better back check or forecheck or all those things, sometimes they get more minutes. The WTF line, it looked like every other shift they were getting minutes. So, and that's, they provide physicality. They're doing all the things like their board play. But it's less about their scoring potential and more about like kind of leading the team by example in the finer details of the game. So I if Jim Montgomery thinks they should be maximizing minutes in that regard and kind of showing the rest of the team, like, hey, here's what it's going to take to beat the Colorado Avalanche right now. Like, obviously it worked out for us because we came out victorious. So I think, Jim Montgomery has a good beat on who he needs in certain situations. And that was one of those situations. Like, if you're not finding the back of the net and you're not even able to put shots on goal, you got to be able to make sure the other team's not scoring either. And thankfully for the Blues, they were able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. And the Blues were able to weather that storm in the second period. We fast forward to the third period, and I tell you what, one of the moments that I got probably the most fired up in this game wasn't when the Blues took the lead and made it 2-1, but more so when the fourth line, and they didn't even end up getting anything on that penalty, but when the fourth line manufactured or drew a penalty against Nathan McKinnon, and people will look at that and they'll say, oh, well, it didn't lead in anything. Does it really matter? And, it's funny, on the Cardinals post game earlier, we were just talking about how even if it doesn't like directly end up leaving, adding to the scoring or, affecting the win for that game, different things that you do can have different impacts on the game. And I think that moment, one, you get McKinnon out of there for 2 minutes. So it gives you almost a little bit of a chance to, I mean, this roster is so talented from top to bottom. So it's not like you can all of a sudden just, play on your heels. But I thought that was a big moment in the game, giving the Blues, and what felt like for the most part, towards that final half of that period, the Avalanche put a lot of pressure on, being able to give the Blues a couple of minutes, not only at that point, but they had a couple of penalties drawn throughout the period, to be able to have a couple of minutes where they were on the offensive possession when they were putting the pressure on. I thought ended up being a big difference in this game too. 2 penalty minutes for the Blues and 8 for Colorado. St. Louis played a cleaner game. That is an area that they did more so dominate in this one, Thomas.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you're a Colorado Avalanche fan, like the first thing you're going to point to is be like, well, the Blues had 4 power plays and we had 1. So even in instances where, the Avalanche are kind of pushing and pressing and putting all this pressure and shots on Jordan Binnington and the Blues defense, if the Blues get, an odd man rush going the other way, and that's creating chaos to your point, like you're saying. And in that chaos, Makar or any of those Colorado defensemen has to kind of, sprawl out and do something that's a little bit chaotic. Like they run the risk of the Blues drawing a penalty from that chaos. So I think, and then from on that power play, like obviously it's a chance to score and you're putting pressure on the other team, but it's also, Jordan Binnington gets to breathe a little bit, and the defense, you're not gripping your sticks as tight because you're not trying to eat every shot from Nathan McKinnon or Makar or Nietzsche or any of those guys on the other side. So it kind of lets you relax a little bit and, take the pressure off, and, in the ebbs and flows of a hockey game, like all of that is crucial for success. And the fact that, you can say that that's kind of a lopsided, power play opportunities 4-1, but if the Blues are creating the chaos to earn those opportunities, like that's what you want from any team.
100%. Completely agree. The Blues took the lead a little over halfway through the third period when Ryan Suter threw one on the net. It actually really started when Robert Thomas had a great takeaway at center ice and led to that offensive zone possession. And eventually Ryan Suter throws one at the net. Pavel Buchnevich gets a great rebound opportunity up front. Over the last couple of years, that's been a huge lacking for St. Louis, was presence in front of the net and in front of the goalie, right there by the crease. And for them to have that presence in that moment proved pretty big, as that one just leaked past Blackwood. What were your biggest takeaways from the goal that put the Blues ahead?
Well, I think you said it best, is that I don't think that goal happens earlier in the season. It's like it takes kind of everyone on the team to fully commit to that identity of like, hey, it doesn't matter like if you're making $8 million or 800,000, like you're going to go to the grimy areas of the ice because that's how people score goals. I mean, that's how Jake Neighbors kind of made his living last season, and just tips, So I think the more that the Blues are capable and willing to do that, the more success they're going to find. And it was just cool to see Pavel Buchnevich do that after missing 4 games and, kind of dealing with the injury and, get back into the lineup. And you would think like, oh, he's kind of, he's been out of the lineup for a couple games. Like he could be a little bit rusty, but to find the back of the net in his first game back, I think bodes well for his confidence and kind of bodes well for the team. It's like, hey, welcome back, buddy. Buchnevich is still one of the top players in the NHL and one of the top players on this team. So he's going to provide success for this team down the stretch, not miss a beat. And you'd love to see it.
Completely agree. Got to give a shout out here to Ryan Suter, who has been a huge piece of the back end of this Blues defensive core throughout the year. Hulk Hogan's t-shirt, that might win the award for best name of all of our people in the chat today. But talking about how he has been solid all season. Very well said there. Hulk Hogan's t-shirt, I guess. But so 100% said there. The Blues end up holding on. It got a little bit stressful there, I would say, in the last probably 4 minutes was really when that onslaught began. It felt like from that point on, the McKinnon line was out there pretty much the entire time, and things were pretty much in the Blues defensive zone for those final 4. And I tell you what, I thought that the Blues did it just about to perfection. I mean, anytime that you have a man advantage with the empty net, you have 6-on-5 with those 6 out there that Colorado did, being able to hold a team for 4 minutes. I can't imagine that happens very often. I don't know if there would have been 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left, if the Blues would have been able to continue holding on, but they held on for the time that they needed to. I was extremely impressed with the St. Louis's ability to get gutsy and hold on when they needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially after the last couple of games when you kind of see the puck go in the back of the net a lot for the St. Louis Blues with like less than 10 seconds left, going to overtime against the Canucks, and then almost what happened at the end of last game and pushing that to overtime. So I think there's definitely cause for concern there for Blues fans, especially when you see the weapons that are McKinnon, Makar, all those guys step onto the ice and immediately the goalie leaves. It's like, oh Jesus, here we go. Right. Like just hopefully it was like everybody during that tornado. It's like, let's just go to the basement for a little bit and then will hopefully come out and the house is still here, and thankfully for the Blues, the house didn't blow away, and they did a great job, taking all the safety precautions to make sure that the Avalanche didn't score. Like you said, I think they were covering lanes well, putting pressure on guys at the point, and you're not going to run out full speed at Nathan McKinnon and get him to dangle you, but you do want to respect him and make sure that you're putting the right amount of pressure on him. And I think they did that really well. So hopefully it feels like they got over this hurdle with the Colorado Avalanche. I think they got the Red Wings on Tuesday, and I think it's the Penguins after that. So if you harken back to 2019, I think the win streak was 11 games for the St. Louis Blues. Ethan, do you think the Blues can potentially reach that 11 game fold? Those are big aspirations. I mean, if you're drawing comparisons to the 2019 Stanley Cup team and what this team right now is capable of, that 11 game win streak is as good of a comparison as any.
Well, Detroit is most I mean, I say winnable game, but there's no game at this point that doesn't feel winnable for this Blues team with how well they've been playing. But Detroit is a game that they most definitely should be expected to win. 72 points on the season. St. Louis has been phenomenal on home ice here the last several weeks. They've been phenomenal overall, but they've been even better on home ice. And then Pittsburgh, you know what? I feel good about Pittsburgh, and the reason so is that I think that the Blues might have a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth from their previous game against the Penguins, where Jordan Binnington was not at his best. A couple of goals leaked in that probably shouldn't have. I thought St. Louis was the better team in that game. It was just one of those situations where the better team didn't win. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Blues have a little bit of a bitter taste from that one. And I feel very confident that St. Louis is going to be able to, has the ability to pull out the next two victories. And then next Saturday, they face off against Colorado once again. So here's the good news. They're at home for all three. Then it gets a little bit challenging. Well, that game is going to be challenging, no doubt. But then it gets a little bit challenging following that, because the week after they have Winnipeg and Edmonton on the road. And then they'll close out the season with Seattle on the road and Utah at home. So I feel as though it is most definitely possible for St. Louis to beat that winning streak that they set the record in 2019. But no doubt there's going to be some challenges come, especially in my mind, next Saturday when Colorado comes back to St. Louis now.
I know we talked about it a little bit last time, but I did see one of the comments in the chat. Cameron Miller was talking about, how are we feeling getting number one or the number two wild card spot and going up against the Jets or the Knights? Which is the better matchup? I know we talked about it a little bit last time. I was kind of on the Jets bandwagon. You were on Vegas's bandwagon. I'm still going to stand by the Jets just because for narrative purposes, I feel like it's just going to be the most entertaining to call back to 2019, the first round matchup, all the things that went on there, and kind of the beginnings of Jordan Binnington as a playoff big game monster, right? But then also call back to the Four Nations and Jordan Binnington taking down Connor Hellebuck in the finals. Now they get a rematch and revenge game against each other, and potentially starting a rivalry. Not that that could potentially start a rivalry, for years across that fold. But I also think the proposition is interesting to kind of throw yourself in the mix against Vegas and really kind of see a side of the playoff bracket that Blues fans aren't really accustomed to, and face off against teams in the playoffs that we usually don't face off. So I want to get your thoughts on that and see if you're standing by Vegas or switching over to my side with the Jets, and if you have any other thoughts on that regard.
Well, I think it depends on how Cameron is asking the question, which is the better matchup, because there's the better matchup as a whole, more entertaining, and then there's the better matchup for the Blues. And I still think that the better matchup for St. Louis is Vegas. I have no doubt in my mind that Winnipeg is the best team in the league, and I don't think it's very close, to be honest. I want to avoid Winnipeg at all costs. I'm still on that bandwagon. The reality is that either of these series would be extremely entertaining. I think that you made some really good points the last post-game show that we were on together, which it was sometime this past week. I don't even remember
Tuesday.
when. It was Tuesday. Yes. I think that you made some great points just about the Blues from playing them so many times. may have a better beat on their style of play. But you could also flip that the other way around and say that Winnipeg may have a little bit of a better understanding of how the Blues are playing right now too. So
Great point.
Regardless, the reality is that even for a team in St. Louis that is as red hot as we are right now, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a battle. And so much of it, as you mentioned, will come down to who has the better goaltender. That so much of it, there's so much physicality. There's so much excitement and intensity in the playoffs. We learned the best in 2019. So many times it comes down to who has the better goaltender in net. And I feel confident putting Jordan Binnington up against anyone right now after this stretch that we've seen in the last several weeks. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a challenge regardless.
You could also make the case that, I think Winnipeg plays a heavier style because, just a central division foe, I feel like plays a heavier style than Vegas does. Vegas is also dealing with a little bit of injury trouble with Shea Theodore, as well as Alex Pietrangelo. But then you've also got the overarching, storm cloud of Ivan Barbashev, Brandon Saad, and Alex Pietrangelo having revenge games, or the Blues having revenge games against them. So there's a bunch of storylines incorporating in there, and different aspects of how you think the Blues could potentially be successful. But I think all of that can help the audience decide who they would rather play. And we could, potentially do a poll on that too. But yeah, I think whoever the Blues play in the first round is going to have all their entire fan base is going to be of course we get the St. Louis Blues. It's a nightmare scenario for anybody that they play, right? The scalding hot, probably best team in the NHL right now going up against you. You would think getting a top seed in whatever division you're in, you're oh, we solidified ourselves. We got a perfect softball opponent in the first round. No, you're going to go up against the absolute dogs that are the St. Louis Blues, full of warriors, full of depth, and probably the best big game goalie in the NHL in Jordan Binnington too. I am so excited that we're going to be a part of, or potentially fingers crossed, but it looks like they're going to be a part of postseason hockey because we talk about it. It is a different beast. And I'm just picturing Enterprise with the rally towels and people going nuts and the lights and the atmosphere, dude. It's been too long for this city, and I will gladly shave my head every year if it means the Blues never miss the playoffs again. Don't clip that. Don't quote me on that because I don't know if that's true. But I'm saying it now, dude. That. I just love playoff hockey, and I love the St. Louis Blues. It's awesome.
Inject that whole thing in my veins. Inject all of it in my veins. The thought of the Blues being back at that point, being so close to that point, is extremely exciting. And we've missed playoff sports, playoff action here in St. Louis these past couple of years. I know the Battlehawks made it last year. I'm not taking away any love from my Battlehawks people out there. But as far as just the top tier of St. Louis sports and the Cardinals and the Blues, we've most definitely missed that. And it would be really exciting to have that back. Speaking of the playoffs, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the current standings in the Western Conference wild card race. As we speak, the Blues and the Wild are knotted at 87 points. Of course, the Wild playing right now. So as we are discussing, St. Louis does have, or the Wild do have 2 games at hand, but here in, no longer than 45 minutes, it'll be 1 game at hand. And as we speak, Minnesota trailing still New Jersey 2-1 in the second intermission. So that's one that we're going to want to be keeping a close eye on. Vancouver at 81 points. So the Blues now 6 points ahead of them. I do not believe that Vancouver plays tonight. They do not. The Calgary Flames,
for references purposes, the Edmonton Oilers, I don't know if they're playing tonight or not, but they currently
they play Calgary tonight.
So they're currently sitting at 87 points. So if they beat Calgary, that's even better for us. But if Calgary beats the Oilers, we'll also have the same amount of points as the Oilers, which is insane because they have Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, who I don't know if they're going to be in the lineup or not because they've been banged up. But just the fact that this we're saying right now, March 29th, 2005, the Blues could potentially have as many points as the Edmonton Oilers. Like, if you're an Oilers fan and you're seeing the offer sheets to Holloway and Broberg, and you're like, oh, have fun never making the playoffs, and then we've got the same amount of points as you, like, you're eating a lot of crow right now, dude.
I think right now with McDavid and Draisaitl being out, I think that they're probably wishing they had a couple of young guys that they could kind of rally around and get some speed back out on the ice. So, boy, that one's feeling pretty good right now for St. Louis fans, as those two have been such a huge piece of the speeding up of this retool that St. Louis is currently in and on the upside of right now. Calgary, as I mentioned, they do play tonight. They face off against Edmonton. They're at 79 points. So as of now, they're 8 points behind St. Louis, but they have only played 71 games. The Blues have played 75. So as we record, 4 games at hand for Calgary. So if they are to lose tonight, boy, that would be a huge one as far as I have to imagine looking at the percentage chances of St. Louis making it and both Vancouver and Calgary not squeezing in. And then all of a sudden, like you mentioned, now it's a real conversation as to if the Blues could end up getting the first wild card spot. I threw it on my Twitter. I threw the poll on my Twitter. Who would you rather the Blues face in the first round of the Cup playoffs, Winnipeg or Vegas? So be sure to go and vote there on my Twitter at echan7. And as we begin to wrap up here, we've talked about the scores, we've talked about the upcoming schedule. Detroit on Tuesday. The last thing that I want to touch on, Thomas, before we wrap up, is the Blues' recent new additions to this squad. Of course, last week it was Dalibor Dvorsky that made his NHL debut when Pavel Buchnevich went down after the game against Nashville. Now it's Jimmy Snuggerud, who just was yesterday, 2 days ago. I think it was yesterday. They announced that he would be joining the Blues after Minnesota had a little bit of an earlier exit from the NCAA tournament than I think they were hoping for. So Jimmy Snuggerud signs his 3-year entry-level contract with the Blues, and now as he'll be a healthy scratch. Well, you assume he'll probably be a healthy scratch to start off his time with St. Louis, but not necessarily. I mean, Matthew Joseph is kind of the guy that I think that if St. Louis is to go ahead and flip someone else in there, we probably see Snuggerud getting in there. I think that he kind of profiles more as a hard-nosed playoff type of guy than Dalibor Dvorsky, partially because of the style of the NCAA. But also, the Blues may not want to take the chance of putting in a guy to make their debut, one, when they're in the middle of a winning streak, and also in such a heated playoff race. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are as to how the Blues are going to navigate Dalibor Dvorsky and Jimmy Snuggerud while they're in the middle of a red-hot playoff race.
Well, I think you phrased a lot of that pretty well. So I'll kind of bounce off of that. And so it sounds like Jimmy Snuggerud's joining the team. We'll be at practice on Monday. Mm-hmm. Whether he plays on Tuesday, it's kind of up in the air. I would love to see him. I feel like a game against the Detroit Red Wings is kind of like we've talked about. Like, obviously you can't take any games off here, but it's not the same opponent as the Colorado Avalanche. And if you're leading up to a matchup where you play the Colorado Avalanche again, it's a good time to get some guys, the rest that, might be banged up. It looked like Sonny was taking some pucks today and was kind of banged up a little bit. Obviously, whether he can play through that, whether he can't, is up to his determination. Most of the time, hockey players will play through things. But if you've got a guy in the fold that's capable of taking minutes away while, letting somebody rest and heal for a playoff stretch, and we're going to need everybody in this lineup, I think that's where Jimmy Snuggerud and Dvorsky can kind of provide value to this team right now. I think Snuggerud, honestly, provides more value in that regard than Dvorsky because he's older and because of the competition in college, like you said. But to his credit, Dvorsky is tearing it up against AHLers, and those guys are nothing but they're studs over there too, So yeah. I think it's a more difficult course to navigate for Dvorsky just because of his age. And I think with Jimmy Snuggerud, You're not going to have him like sign a contract with the Blues, bring him over, and then just keep him in the press box like every game. Even though like just being around the team throughout this run will be good for his development to kind of see how everybody goes about their day to day. But I do think they're going to get his feet wet at some point eventually. Probably, if I had to guess, either against Detroit or against the Penguins. But I don't think he'll be in the lineup against the Avalanche. But it'll be exciting to see down the stretch for sure. And when you think of the success that Bolduc has had and Holloway and Broberg and all these young guys under Jim Montgomery, but specifically Bolduc to come in and just kind of tear things up the way that he has with a lack of NHL experience, I think getting Snuggerud in here, especially because they have like a similar play style. I don't know, like I'll be the first one to say I was not expecting Bolduc to come up and bang bodies and, you know, have as many hits as he has and block shots and be as versatile in the lineup as he has been, because he was a bona fide scorer in the QMJHL. So I feel like I don't want to eat crow and say that Snuggerud will also not have that, but like his biggest thing is his shot, right? So thinking about the potential of Snuggerud and Bolduc, not this season, obviously, but potentially in 5 years, just ripping hammers on the power play together with Robert Thomas in the middle, like weaving Jordan Kyrou there. Like you could not be more excited about this season and what the playoffs look like, but also the next 3 to 5 years for the St. Louis Blues team, because that top 9 combined with the WTF line is going to be a force to be reckoned with every single game. And I'm so stoked to watch it all unfold in front of us.
We talked about the speeding up of this retool and how big the offer sheet boys have been for that. But also, I mean, you look at how well of a job St. Louis has done at developing these prospects. I mean, all these guys, yes, Neighbors, Bolduc, Dvorsky, Snuggerud, obviously Dvorsky and Snuggerud still to come, but Neighbors and Bolduc specifically, yes, they were first-round picks, but these were late first-round picks. I mean, it's not like these guys were, you know, top 5 picks. And, you know, they say this about a lot of these drafts is once you get outside of the top 5 picks, top 10 picks, everyone else beyond that point, it's kind of hit or miss. It's kind of, they're just guys. And it's a matter of how well you do it at developing them, how well you do it finding them. And the Blues have developed these guys, I mean, extremely well up to this point. So you have to give your credits to Doug Armstrong. You have to give your credits to Alexander Steen and this entire organization's leadership, making sure that the guys that they are bringing in are being a huge piece of the success that St. Louis is having and are going to have here down the road for the next however many years. I mean, you throw Kyrou in there, throw Thomas in there as well. Obviously, they're a little bit farther down there into their careers, but they're also great examples. So excited about what is to come here in this next, how many games do we have left now? Is it, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in this stretch of this next 7 games, but also potentially a playoff run. And then beyond that, what these next couple of years are going to look like, Thomas.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I think that's why like Doug Armstrong feels comfortable enough in their drafting capability that they don't feel the need that they have to tank ever. Right. Like I know like when things seem grim in St. Louis, like in 2019, I was the first one saying like lose for Hughes, right? We were last in the league. Like you don't want the worst thing you could possibly do in any franchise in any sports is be in purgatory where you just miss the playoffs by a game and your draft pick is the worst possible before actually getting into playoff hockey or football or whatever it is. Right. But with this Blues team, like they're so confident that they're able to hit and so comfortable at hitting in that like 16 to 32 range or late in the first round. Like you were saying, like, I mean, just think about the guys that you mentioned, obviously were great draft picks by the St. Louis Blues, but also Tage Thompson comes to mind. Jordan Kyrou was a 2nd round draft pick, which like, by all means should not be having the success. Like
Vince Dunn.
Vince Dunn. I was just about to say him too. And then you'd throw in guys like Barbashev, throw in guys like Torpachenko, and then guys like Colton Parayko that come out of nowhere. Like there's like there's enough consistency there in the hits by the scouting department, by the front office, by the development team that it's not a coincidence for the Blues. So I think all of that kind of ingrained into the identity that is this team, bringing guys in, even if they're a skill guy like Zachary Bolduc and being like, hey, we know you're good at putting the puck in the back of the net, but we want you to show us that you're good at every other facet that it will take to be successful in Blues hockey. And he's shown that throughout the course of the season. So and that's to Blues fans' credit. Like, it makes sense why we put so much stock into these products, because like 9 times out of 10, when they get it to the NHL, they have the success that we're looking for. Right. But at the same time, you don't want to put too much pressure on these guys, especially at a young age, to perform as soon as they enter the league. But, all of those things taken into consideration, I think, have to make you hopeful and excited for the next 5 years for sure.
It's been a fun one to break down. It's been a fun one to discuss. Arguably the most exciting game of the season for the Blues. The gutsiest, no doubt, as they win their 9th straight, up to 87 points now as their playoff chances continue to climb. And we appreciate all of you being a part of today's Blues Hub post-game show. We want this to be an area for you guys to be as much involved in the show as Thomas and I are, sharing your thoughts, asking your questions. That's what we are all about here at Sports Hub STL. We appreciate the love from you guys as well, and just your involvement. You show your love and your intentionality for St. Louis sports very well, and the successful weekend for St. Louis sports no doubt continues on. The Cardinals off to a good start. The Blues playing their best hockey in at least 3 years. And hey, the Battlehawks getting a win yesterday. Cause the law, baby. 1-0 on the year, so we love that as well.
That was sick.
And we are also we also have Battlehawks post game shows now on the Hub, so be sure to keep an eye on those as well. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here, Thomas?
If you want to see me bald, the only place you're going to be able to see it is here. So if you have not already, make sure you subscribe, turn on those notifications so that you never miss a post-game show, because like Ethan said, regardless of whether it's Ethan, Mike, Brooke, whoever's on this post-game show, we're trying to bring it to you every single time, full arsenal, 100% energy, but also make it about you guys. Like he said, like, we're not trying to just steamroll this show past all the comments. We want to talk, converse with you guys, get a sense for what the fans are feeling about this team, and kind of go from there. So like I said, smash that bell, subscribe, get the notifications on. If you want to see this bald noggin, this is the only place you're going to see it, because I do not want that living on Twitter.
Well, it'll just be living on YouTube instead. So
exactly, perfect.
It'll still be out there somewhere.
Yeah.
He is Thomas Welch. I am Ethan Hannaford. This has been the Blues Hub post-game show as a part of Sports Hub STL. Thank you for being a part of it, and we will see you on Tuesday.